Chicago. My name is Nick Rohde. I am joined alongside my good friend and co-host London Beth. And today we are beginning our pre-training camp series of evaluating different areas of the Chicago Bears. And we are starting off with the Chicago Bears secondary. But before we begin, a word from our sponsor, Higher Level Camps.
Higher Level Camps is the longest running boys and girls AAU basketball program in the state of Wisconsin. HLC was established in 1995 by their founder and retired WNBA player, Cheryl Moore. 27 years and counting. Keep it up, Cheryl. For more information, visit higherlevelcamps.com and say Just Another Year Chicago sent you.
And yes, Cheryl is a Packers fan, but we love her. But let's jump into it. The Chicago Bears' current secondary on the roster. A lot of people are upset currently about the secondary right now because Pro Bowler and longtime Bear Kyle Fuller is no longer on the team due to cap restrictions. The Bears let him go because they were unable to restructure the contract. But let's break down who is on this roster because that's who's going to be representing the Chicago Bears this year. So right now we have Jalen Johnson, Eddie Jackson, Tayshaun Gibson Sr., Kindle Vildor, Desmond Trufant, Duke Shelley, Jordan Lucas, DeAndre Houston Carson, Thomas Graham Jr., not Tony, Thomas, Dion Bush, Artie Burns, and a few undrafted free agents. We won't hit on them because we are wanting to be respectful of everyone's time. If they do make the roster, we will definitely get more into them in a later podcast. But first, just to kick things off, a lot of returning players for the Chicago Bears to work under Coach Desai. This is very good, especially, again, with that big loss of Kyle Fuller going to the Denver Broncos to go back with Vic Fangio. But, man, it is good to see when a group that has had success in the past is staying on the roster. The Bears obviously do want to return back to that 2018 defense status. And this group is pretty legitimate looking. And, a lot of big additions this offseason. We re-signed Tayshaun Gibson Sr. That was a big one. Desmond Trufant, who came from Detroit, who was a very successful corner for the Atlanta Falcons before suffering an injury in his last season. Went to Detroit, played okay, maybe was kind of getting used to the NFC North, stayed within the NFC North, signed with the Bears. We'll get into his contract in a little bit. But a lot, and then obviously, you have a Super Bowl champion, Jordan Lucas. You have Duke Shelley coming back, DeAndre Houston Carson, who is obviously a great guy and great teammate to have. Thomas Graham Jr., Dion Bush. The list just goes on. So, London, when you look at this room before we kind of break down everyone, as an individual, what do you see out of this secondary?
Well, the biggest thing is there's a lot of returning players, Nick. Other than Kyle Fuller, which losing him, of course, a lot of Bears fans were, freaking out about that. We're upset. Honestly, again, he didn't want to restructure. I didn't really exactly feel that he really wanted to be in Chicago all the way back from when he tried to do the whole shenanigans with the Green Bay Packers. Kind of put a bad taste in my mouth also, but love Kyle Fuller. He was a great corner, and he's going to do great things with the Denver Broncos and Vic Fangio. The biggest thing is youth. Okay, experience, and it's a great mix of just veteran leadership with very, very big up-and-coming players, such as Jalen Johnson. I still think Eddie Jackson's very up-and-coming. He's still very young. Vildor has been getting a ton of media news and stuff like that with mini camps and stuff and just information that's been coming out of his leadership and the things that he's been doing at camp. Of course, Thomas Graham Jr. is coming in. And then on the flip side of it, we bring Gibson Sr. back. We bring in Desmond Trufant, who was an elite corner for the Atlanta Falcons, had kind of a down year with the Detroit Lions, but everybody has a down year with the Detroit Lions. Artie Burns is kind of a veteran. Dion Bush was, recruited and played on that Miami Hurricanes team when Coach Desai was there. By the way, shout out to Coach Desai's wife for retweeting us when we had our past episode about him. Thank you to her. We'd love to have both of you on one of these days, but I know you have family stuff going on. But yeah, so there's a great mixture of veteran leadership and who know the league, know how to play in the secondary, and also upcoming talent. And that's something that everybody should be extremely excited about going into training camp. The depth is a lot better than what people understand and what people see, because they see Kyle Fuller leave and us replace him with Desmond Trufant, and everybody freaks out. If you really look at the numbers, Desmond Trufant and Kyle Fuller were pretty close to the same player. Pretty close to the same player. Desmond Trufant, actually, like I said, when he was on the Atlanta Falcons, was probably, and I'm pretty sure it was like the 2014 or 15 season, had a phenomenal year, way eclipsed anything that Kyle Fuller did.
Yeah. And again, obviously players have their up and down years. I think that for what we paid for Desmond Trufant, which we're going to get into in a second, was an absolute steal. But my biggest person, but just before we get into the list, is bringing back Gibson Sr. I think that
you love him.
I love the guy. I think he's a hard player. He hits hard. He's a ball hawk, even under Chuck Pagano. And he was $1 million man. That was it. And he did exactly what the Bears needed him to do, especially filling in for when Amos left. But okay, so now that we've kind of gotten our little jitters out, let's break down everyone one by one. So obviously the big name to start, Jalen Johnson, 22 years old, second year, was a starter last year as a rookie. Arguably, he could have been a runner-up for Defensive Rookie of the Year if he didn't get hurt. He played really well, and he played through injuries. He's a big hitter. In this offseason, he has put in work. He is now the number one corner on the Chicago Bears roster. A lot of fans love this guy because of how he plays and his story. And also, I love that he's only 22 years. I mean, that's just so impressive how young he is, how well he's doing. And he has that chip on his shoulder strictly because of the fact he felt he should have been a first-round pick in last year's draft. But he wasn't because of he's been a very injury-driven guy. That's the one thing that's kind of hurt his collegiate career. And obviously to start off his NFL career on, being out for the last couple games of the season, it has hurt him. And that's what hurt his draft capital. But the Bears, a lot of analysts were like, how did the Bears get this guy in the second round along with Cole Kmet? And he is only going to get better from here on out. He looks great. He looks healthy. He's saying that this is the best shape I've ever been in. I've never felt healthier. So very excited. And now he has that little bit of seasoning on him. He has worked with Kyle Fuller, and things are looking to go in the right direction for Jalen Johnson. London, Jalen Johnson thoughts. I know you're a big fan of him too, but what are you expecting out of him for this upcoming season?
There were 6 corners in the 2020 NFL draft taken ahead of him. 6. Okay. Some of the likes of Damian Arnett for the Oakland Raiders, CJ Henderson on the Jaguars, who was having a decent year kind of in the beginning, then fell off. Jeff Gladley I think he came out of TCU. I'm almost positive there. So 6 corners were drafted ahead of Jalen Johnson. And the biggest thing I think you just hit on is that chip on his shoulder. He came off an injury out of Utah. You know what I mean? So that, of course, dropped his draft capital, far because he went into the second round.
Right.
But being 22 years old, coming off now the best shape of his life. If you haven't seen his workouts on Twitter, really, really, really go look at them. And I know we've been talking about that a lot. I mean, if Chase Young didn't exist for the Washington Redskins and didn't finish that year and kind of will that team into the playoffs, and Jalen Johnson didn't get hurt, I agree with you. He would have been the runner-up for Defensive Rookie of the Year. He's the guy. I mean, he's the guy in Chicago. I mean, he is the guy. I mean, we've gone from Charles, Peanut Tillman, shout out to him. And we've gone from him, then we went to kind of that Kyle Fuller era. And now it's Jalen Johnson era in Chicago. That's a huge weight on his shoulders. There's been really, really great corners throughout the years and throughout the decades for the Chicago Bears, but he kind of fits that mold. Hard hitting, will stick his nose into running backs and also receivers, doesn't care, will put his body on the line, but also covers, and isn't like a crazy athletic freak. He's not like, Richard Sherman, who's like 6'3", 6'4". He's not blazing fast, and he's not a crazy athletic freak, but fundamentally he is so sound.
Yes.
He puts himself in that area. He had the most pass deflections in the NFL before he got injured. That is huge as a rookie.
Rookie.
Yeah, as a rookie. And I think coming off this year, like I said, he is the guy in Chicago. Everybody's going to be looking at him. Everybody's going to be seeing, what is he going to do? Is he going to shadow the number one corner or the number one receiver on the other team? What's going to happen? I think the biggest thing is, how is he going to look in this training camp? And is he going to look healthy and up to speed guarding, Allen Robinson, and also the quicker receivers that we have on this team, like Darnell Mooney, and just see how his legs and see how his body looks. If it looks great, he's in for a big year, a huge year.
Yeah, and also, and what's great is that he's on his rookie contract. So, he's cheap. He's super cheap. He's going to want that bag if he keeps this up, though. But he's got to stay healthy. We absolutely need him to stay healthy this year, especially not having Kyle Fuller on the other side of the ball. But let's go into the second guy that is also super important and a fan favorite, Eddie Jackson, known as Bo Jack. He's already in his 5th year, which I can't believe I'm saying, but he's already in his 5th year in the NFL. we love him because, not only we love him, but the NFL loves him because he brings that swagger to the field. His playing style is like, I'm going to get in your face. And he's low-key a trash talker, but he's like, says it at the right moment just to get under your skin. Like, he just feeds off that energy when opposing players are just like upset. And then he's like, oh, okay, it's a field day now. But he knows when to keep his mouth shut. He knows how to, succeed in silence. And the last 2 years have been for Eddie Jackson. Back before and up to 2018, Eddie Jackson was taking the league by storm as a young DB that's going to be the next big name on the defensive side of the ball in the secondary. Unfortunately, under Pagano's defense, and we talked about this last time about Coach Desai, if you want to go back and listen to what we had to say a little bit more, he wasn't designed for Eddie Jackson's playing style, being a ball hawk, going after every single ball. He doesn't like to play zone. He likes to go for the ball. He likes to take that risk, and usually it works out in his favor. But now that Coach Desai has taken over this Bears defense, he is probably going to get back to that top 5 safety in the league. But overall, very, very excited for him. Hopefully that will open up things for his career again. But, I like him out. London, what do you think about Eddie Jackson going into training camp, and what does he need to do to continue to improve?
Yeah, I just want to put an asterisk next to the season that he had under Pagano.
Yes.
The biggest problem and the biggest reason and the biggest problem that kind of fell on Bojack, who is probably arguably one of my favorite Bears in the last couple of years. I love the way he carries himself. I love the way he plays. I mean, he came out of Alabama and he was injured and everybody kind of passed on him, and we took that chance and it paid off.
4th round pick.
Yeah. So Pagano's style of defense doesn't really, it's very zone based, and it doesn't really, focus on having good safety play. The Colts had that same issue. I mean, they had, Malik Hooker for a couple of years and stuff. He didn't really flourish there. I mean, and they've had a few other ones. The moment that they left, they have a couple of guys now on the Colts defense that were kind of, they have Justin Blackman from Virginia or Virginia Tech or something like that. And as soon as Pagano left, he came in and he had a really good rookie season. So right. I really don't think Pagano's defense is really focused too much on safety, and that really hurt Eddie Jackson. 2 things about him. I mean, we signed him really early to an extension. So, we don't have to have like a Jamal Adams situation where he wants the bag later. And you know what I mean? We signed him, gave him his money at an early time. I think that was really smart on Ryan Pace's side. The really, really awesome thing about him is he has the most interceptions returned from touchdowns since he's entered the league in the NFL. And I think 3 or 4 of them got called back on like ridiculous holding calls. Yes. So he would have even more. And he already leads the league in it. So he is just your prototype ball hawk, put me on, a tight end, put me on anybody. I'm going to go out there and I'm going to cover anybody and I'm going to intercept it. The biggest thing about Eddie Jackson that not a lot of people understand or not a lot of people know is if you watch his ability to cover man to man, whether it's on a slot wide receiver, whether it's on the number 1 wide receiver. I've seen him go against the likes, of Adams for the Packers and, when like Kenny Galladay was on the line and stuff and completely shut them down one-on-one. Safeties don't do that. Safeties don't do that in the NFL. Okay. They really don't. Like nowadays, safeties are kind of prototype box and outside. He is your number 1 ball hawk. And honestly, everybody out there that thinks that he is not the number 1 best free safety in the NFL, I don't think understand what the true position of a free safety is. I know a lot of these safeties in the NFL are kind of more strong safeties now. Same with Amos and stuff. He kind of like works around, goes in the box a little bit, kind of moves around. Eddie Jackson doesn't. You put Eddie Jackson on an island or you tell him and point at some guy and say, you are covering that guy. That man will not touch the ball. He will, no one's getting behind Eddie Jackson. I mean, and honestly, if the ball is thrown in his area, he is going to take that for 6. And the biggest thing is I think we just need to put an asterisk on the Pagano, defense with Eddie Jackson. Let him get back to what he was doing. And I know Desai will do that because when he does, our defense is so much more elite because, when we're covering people for 4 or 5 seconds and there's nowhere to pass the ball, even with our free safety covering, their really good tight end or something like that, Khalil Mack is going to get there. We're going to get the sack. It's over.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that kind of leads perfectly into the next guy I was kind of talking about is Tayshaun Gibson Sr. He is also another ball hawk, and having 2 safeties that can be total ball hawks is awesome. So Gibson is 30 years old. He's entering his 10th year in the league. So he's been in the league for a very long time for being a 30-year-old. Usually guys come in at like 22, 23 years old. He came in the league at 20. So he's the longest veteran DB on the roster. He started last year for the Chicago Bears, filling in for Adrian Amos. And it was a good fill-in. He's a strong player, loves to go after the ball like Eddie Jackson. He had the most interceptions on the Bears last year, which was great. He almost had 2 against Carolina, which was pretty sweet. It was Carolina. It was an away game. It was Carolina, or was it Jacksonville? Jacksonville was at home. But he has had a very big season, and I'm a huge fan of this guy. London said it earlier. For not paying him more than $2.5 million over the last 2 seasons, he's a total steal for what we're getting out of him on defense. I'm excited to see what he'll do, especially because he hasn't ever played under the Vic Fangio style defense. And I think that we need to start moving away, and this is Desai's defense. This is Desai, like, yes, until we prove it, until the season comes about and we see how this defense does. Someone commented on our last video. Let's see how he does first before we start calling him Vic Fangio 2.0. I think he still has the potential to be Vic Fangio 2.0, especially if he says he's going to bring that playing style back. But let's just see for himself. But Desai is hopefully going to make this guy even more of a ball hawk, and I'm very excited about it. So, London, I know that Eddie Jackson's your big guy. You just hit on him. You know, Gibson is the same similar kind of guy. So are you feeling the same vibes from him, or what are you kind of looking forward to see out of Gibson this upcoming season?
Yeah, Nick, the biggest compliment I can give to Gibson is I don't have to say much about Gibson. Okay.
Exactly.
He's 30 years old. He's a veteran. He knows how to play defense. He knows how to play safety in the NFL. And honestly, he's going to do exactly what he did last year. He's a strong player. He's someone who we can rely on. And I don't have to worry about the ups and downs. I mean, he's been very consistent his whole career. And I expect the same. He's a $1 million, $2 million man. He's going to go out there. He's going to play the position, and he's going to be great at it. I'm so happy we brought him back.
Absolutely. And this is a guy that, it could be a difference maker for the Bears. Mm-hmm. And now we have someone else that we're going to get into right now. Kindle Vildor, 22 years old, second-year man, was mainly on special teams last year, but he has Gibson and Jackson that are going to kind of hopefully make him into a safety or a cornerback, either position. Vildor can do both. And he was a leader in college. He was a captain. He is very, very underrated for the Chicago Bears because he was drafted later. A lot of people kind of slept on him, but in his first year, just on special teams alone, he had a lot of good impressions, and fans really like him from the times that he had to get thrown in there. When Jalen Johnson got hurt, they had to throw Vildor in there right away just to fill him in and next man up, and Vildor got the job done. So, for only being 22 years old, he's a great coverage guy, man-to-man or zone. Pick your poison. He's going to get it done for you. But there's a strong chance that he is going to get a lot of playing time this year, whether it be in the nickel or whether that be, switching out with Jalen Johnson, or if Desmond Trufant just isn't what he used to be in Atlanta. Again, we signed Trufant for nothing. He's next on our list. Vildor could be the starter. So, London, I know we talked about it before. What are you thinking about Vildor entering this season?
He reminds me so much of Tim Jennings.
Really?
He really does. He's littler. He's scrappy.
Littler.
You know what I mean? He plays that good kind of coverage and leadership. He went to Georgia Southern for college, which was kind of like a low grade D1, but he was the captain there. You know what I mean? And he got drafted. I think he was the only player that got drafted out of that team. So clearly there was something there. But again, he just kind of, if you go back and kind of look at his Georgia Southern tape and Tim Jennings, when Tim Jennings was young, both undersized, 5'8", 5'9", under 6 foot, which is kind of not something that a lot of NFL teams look for corners these days because receivers are getting so much bigger. But all the news we've heard out of mini camps, out of workouts, going into training camp, Vildor is going to be a guy that's going to see a lot more playing time this year. He's making a lot of strides at the age of 22. So at the end, when we do our predictions, I have a very bold prediction, but I'm very excited for him. I think he's going to have a very, very good training camp, and he's going to compete. And, I'm thinking he's going to get a lot more playing time that he's seen and get out of that just special teams guy.
And I hope he does, because every guy deserves their chance in the NFL. And, when you have a DeAndre Houston Carson who literally accepts the fact that he's a special teams guy, but can play on defense, that's big. We'll get to him in a second, though. But the last big name before we kind of just get into, who we think is going to probably be second stringers for this defense is Desmond Trufant. So 30 years old, 9th year in the NFL. He was a dominant corner. Probably I would say top 10 while in Atlanta. Injuries kind of, messed up things for him back in 2018, 2019. And then the 2020 season, he went to Detroit, battled some injuries there, not nearly as bad as those 2 last years in Atlanta, and could never find his stride because it was the Lions defense. It wasn't what it was. You put him with a good defensive team, you put him with a good defensive coordinator, he's going to perform well as long as he stays healthy. And we got him for $1.075 million. That's absolutely nothing for a guy who once was a top 10 corner. Obviously, he's going to try to prove himself. If he has a good year, he's probably going to try to get the bag. Kind of like what Clinton Dix did. Even though he wasn't elite or anything, Clinton Dix went and got the bag in Dallas after he came to Chicago for a year. So good veteran pickup, great bang for your buck by Ryan Pace. I think he's starting to get good at negotiating with these guys, saying, hey, we'll take a chance on you. You need to take a chance on us. And then we could discuss a contract after 1 year. I like what Pace is doing. But, London, you've already kind of hit on Trufant, but do you have anything else before we start getting into the guys that are going to be more of a supporting role before we hop into our predictions for the season?
Yeah, the only biggest thing about Desmond Trufant is the money, great. You know what I mean? We're only paying like $1 million or so, which is just pennies on the dollar in the NFL.
Yep.
The second biggest thing is I ask our viewers to go look and see what Prince Amukamara did when we first brought him in. In 2018, he was a lockdown corner, and he was kind of on the back end of his career. A steal, didn't really do much out of Nebraska, and then did a lot out of Nebraska, and then came to us kind of on the back end of his career. Everybody was like, "Why the heck did we sign him for nothing? He's not going to do anything." He ended up having a really good year, having a couple picks for sixes, and really, really played really well when Kyle Fuller was still developing as a corner. I expect Desmond Trufant to do the same thing. Jalen Johnson is still going to have growing pains. He's still going to need time. And Desmond Trufant is going to be there as that veteran leader like Gibson Sr. is for the safety position. So I'm excited about it. I like Desmond Trufant. I think he was great at Atlanta. Nobody does well for the Detroit Lions. So we'll just, again, scratch that off of his career. And I hope he can come in and be like that Prince Amukamara for a year because, that is exactly what we need.
Yeah, absolutely. So kind of going into the role kind of guys, we got Duke Shelley, 24 years old, third year in the NFL. He's fast, has a good chance of playing that nickel corner spot. I could see him getting a lot more playing time this upcoming season. He's earned his time for sure. He's been a big special teams player, but he has jumped in on defense and has performed very well in regards to, filling in for Jalen Johnson or Kyle Fuller during that time. I think he still will be a big special teams help, but he's going to become that guru. But he will see more time on defense, probably in the nickel position due to his size, but he's fast. Kind of like a Bryce Callahan kind of situation. So anything on Duke Shelley, London, or pretty much did I hit the nail on the head?
We lost probably one of the best special teams players in NFL history. Okay, we did. We lost probably one of the best, and I think Duke Shelley is going to be his replacement. I really do. I think Duke Shelley is going to be his replacement, and I think Duke Shelley is going to do great thing and actually be on the team for a decently long time because of that. And that's where I see him. That's exactly where I see him, and I think he'll fit that role extremely well.
Absolutely. And, we were going to hit on Sharon McManus a little later, but yes, we did release him officially this last season. He has been signing one-year contracts with the Bears for a very long time, has filled in with needed. We were both very upset when he left. So best of luck to him in his future career. But I think Duke Shelley could be the next guy to do that for the next, 10, 15 years, which would be awesome. I mean, think about it. You're making like $30 million to just play 4 or 5 snaps a game, crazy snaps a game at least. But let's go into a guy that we brought in, Jordan Lucas, 27 years old, corner from the Kansas City Chiefs. It's in his 5th year, and he won a Super Bowl with the Chiefs. So it's always good to go out. It's another vet guy to kind of develop the younger guys, but it's always good to go out and get someone who knows what it's like to win a Super Bowl. And I think that's super important because, he was there to know what it was like to be a part of a team that actually won it all. What the work that had to be put in. And the Bears, yes, 2018 was a fantastic year. We know what it's like to be NFC North champions. Fantastic. Not a Super Bowl ring involved in that though. So I think it's just an overall good pickup. It was good bang for your buck for Ryan Pace too. Will he make the roster? I don't know. I feel like there is a chance that he might get released if it comes down to money, if it comes down to, taking on younger guys who are just as good, but not a bad pickup. But London, any thoughts on Jordan Lucas?
No, I agree. I mean, he's good depth, and Gibson Sr., did get injured and does have a little bit of injury stuff. So, I mean, he's good depth. Will he make the roster? I'm not positive on it. But like I said, I mean, good depth, good experience. I mean, we kind of talked about that.
And a next guy that we're going to talk about, DeAndre Houston Carson, just re-signed with the Bears this past offseason, another one-year deal. Is 28 years old, 6-year man, mainly been on a special team star. A lot of people remember him for breaking up the pass to win the Bucs game this past season. I like him a lot. I think that they should give him a shot to get more playing time. But he also, in interviews, says, I am a special teams guy. That is what I'm here to do. Put the guys out there. He had, and kind of him saying that is him going, put the guys out there that are actually going to play defense. I'd rather have a for sure secure roster spot, making $1.5 million a year just to play on special teams. So I know we both like him, but
special teams,
most important
baby. Thing.
And the next guy that we're going to talk on, London and I like a lot, Thomas Graham Jr., not Tony Graham Jr., Thomas Graham Jr., 22-year-old rookie out of Oregon. A lot of hype considered around this guy because he was considered a big steal. A lot of analysts say that. I think he's going to kind of do the whole special teams. We're going to figure this out for the next year or two, see where you're going to best fit at, whether it be nickel corner or regular corner. So he's going to get a lot of playing time. He will be a lot of playing time, special teams. He's fast, hard hitter, but could earn more. London, I know you like this guy a lot. Anything to say about him really fast?
No, we've talked about him a lot. And like I said, I think Thomas Graham Jr. and Vildor are going to kind of compete for more playing time on our defense. Okay. I'd probably lean more Vildor just because he's a little more seasoned veteran. And then Thomas Graham will fill in if injuries happen. But I'm excited to see what he does for training camp. I mean, I really am. I'm very excited to see what he does.
And then Deon Bush, a guy we've talked about a few times. Coach Desai has worked with him all the way from his Miami days to now when he's on Chicago. 6-year guy, 27 years old, could play nickel. He's proven he can do it. He's another strong special teams guy. I think there's London, you've hit on him a bunch, so I think we're just going to get to the final guy before our predictions. But very, very good, strong depth player. But the last guy that a lot of people don't know about and is an interesting person on this Bears roster is Artie Burns. 26 years old, so pretty young, 6-year guy, was, good enough to come out of college at 20 years old, signed with the Bears last year during the COVID season, tore his ACL in training camp, so an unfortunate injury, and he played for the Steelers before, was pretty decent on the Steelers, but the Bears liked what they saw so much, they brought him back again to give him a second shot. I think that he will make the roster. He's another veteran, can build around. Obviously, the Bears see something in him that we haven't yet. So go check out his highlights when he was on the Steelers. He was a pretty decent corner, or overall DB. But London, anything on Artie Burns before we go into our starters?
He was a top end pick when he got drafted out of Miami Hurricanes. So just another Hurricane. Coach Desai has ties to that and stuff like that. And he kind of struggled with the Steelers, but I mean he still is only 26 years old. That's really young. And $1 million deal. He does have those abilities. And if he can kind of put it together and maybe revitalize his career for the Chicago Bears, he, again, with Vildor and Thomas Graham Jr., he can push for playing time. I really think so. Absolutely. I mean, I would keep a very close eye on Artie Burns in this training camp.
Absolutely. So that's everybody. That's everybody that is not an undrafted free agent. Again, if an undrafted free agent makes the roster, we'll definitely be talking about them in a later episode. But London, who are your starting DBs for the Chicago Bears after training camp this upcoming season?
Yeah, I'm going Jalen Johnson, Desmond Trufant. I'm going Vildor as the nickel. I'm going Eddie Jackson, Gibson Sr. At the two safety positions. I think I think Thomas Graham maybe could fill in a little bit with Vildor, but I think Vildor is going to come in. I think he's been doing really, really well in the offseason. We've heard a lot of great things out of minicamp. I think he's going to come in, earn that starting position at the nickel, kind of take over that kind of Bryce, Callahan position-esque that we lost. Very excited for it. Yeah. Very excited for him too. I mean, good for him. Out of Georgia Southern, that is really, really great. And that's kind of a success story and what Ryan Pace is all about.
Yeah, and it's all about the late steals, not deals. And I think that you're absolutely correct on that. Mine's very similar. Obviously, Jalen Johnson's going to be one of our starting corners. Desmond Trufant will start the season. I will say that he will start the season. I don't know. It depends on how he plays. Eddie Jackson at one safety spot, Tayshaun Gibson Sr. at the other safety spot. And then I know I just said he might get released, but I feel like Jordan Lucas could start at that first couple games, kind of feel him out a little bit. Let's see how he does at nickel. But then Vildor, I'm with you. I have written down right here, I feel like Vildor could definitely get playing time over him. I could even say like Duke Shelley. Deion Bush, they're going to want to keep on special teams. But if they absolutely need to throw him in there, they will. So that's our predictions for this upcoming season. That's a little bit about each one of our players entering training camp. So wishing them the best health during training camp. We don't want any injuries. We want these guys to have the best opportunity as possible to live their NFL dream and make it to there. But that is the secondary. First episode, pre-training camp episode, secondary to start things off. Tune in Wednesday for our upcoming episode as we will go over London. What are we going over on Wednesday?
Going over the linebackers.
The linebackers. So we're staying on the defensive side of the ball this entire week. So stay tuned for that. And London and I have both submitted to go to training camp, the free tickets for 1,000 fans. So stay tuned. Tony would be there. Tony said he'd go. Tony's getting into football. We're all about it. Go to our Instagram. Make sure you check it out. It's our handles in below. Tony and I were absolutely smashed at Murphy's. We took a picture, though, so we had to say we did it. But with that, thank you for joining this episode of Just Another Year Chicago. My name is Nick Rohde, joined alongside London Beth, and we will see you guys next time.